In this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about vibrato on trombone. You have two choices. You can use jaw or embouchure vibrato. Those two are the same thing. Or you can use slide vibrato. Some people use the term diaphragm vibrato, where you puff your air to create the pulsations. I don't agree with doing that, so I'm going to leave that out of this discussion. I believe that the air is your gasoline on the trombone. And when you start puffing your air, then you create a lot of problems for your overall technique. So I like leaving that airstream alone, and that's why I don't advocate the so-called diaphragm vibrato. I don't let my students use vibrato until they can get a good characteristic tone across the range of the instrument. They have a good set of solid fundamentals. Only then can they really season the melody with the vibrato. And it's a very important technique, but only when you're ready for it. If you use it prematurely, you can cover some inadequacies in your technique, and we don't want that. We want to get a good solid foundation. Once you are ready, I recommend using jaw vibrato first, because it's a little bit easier in some ways than the slide vibrato, which we'll get to in just a moment. To do the jaw vibrato, just say ma 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 over and over, allowing your chin to move up and down, and manipulate the pitch both above and below the note. Vibrato has two variables. There's frequency and amplitude. Frequency is how fast or slow, and amplitude is how wide or shallow. So here's an example of a vibrato that's very fast on the frequency and very shallow amplitude. So it's pretty subtle. Now, if I reverse that profile, we can do a vibrato with a very wide amplitude that's got a slow frequency. Now, that's a pretty unusual profile, but there may be a musical circumstance when you'd use that. And in fact, the profile of the vibrato should be determined by the musical circumstance. So you should be prepared for any situation, and you should use the vibrato that best suits that situation. So, for example, think about the second movement of the Castrad Sonatine. I like allowing the vibrato here to start after I establish the pitch of the note, and sort of warm up the melody a little bit at a time. There are moments in this melody where I like to take the vibrato out in the middle of the melody, which gives it a little bit of a different flavor and is expressive in a different way. So, for example, at this point in the melody, for example, it really depends. Even within a single movement, the profile of the vibrato might change. Now, the other possibility is slide vibrato. Now, slide vibrato is not just for jazz, although it is used primarily in jazz. It's possible to use slide vibrato in a classical context. The key is, if you're using it in a classical context, don't let it get away from you. In other words, keep the profile relatively subtle. So this is the one technique where I would isolate the movement to the wrist, and in fact the movement that I use is really kind of a forearm rotation like this. It's not really hingy, it's more of a 45-degree angle kind of a thing like that. So here's a great way to get your vibrato to sound mature and organic. Try holding the pitch, adding some jaw vibrato, and then making the pitch square again, and then adding slide vibrato, and match the two styles of vibrato so they have the same profile. Here's a faster one. So if I were to apply the slide vibrato to that Castor-Ed movement, so it gives the movement a much different flavor. I have to say, in this case, I kind of like both. So I might move back and forth between those two interpretations. Perfectly fine to do that. And you can also play with the profile of that slide vibrato too, obviously. And what I was doing just now is just a little bit more, it's a little wider in amplitude than I did with the jaw vibrato. Players who can master a good vibrato tend to sound far more mature and superior than the players that don't. And having judged a number of competitions in my day, the players who have a really nice vibrato tend to come out on top. Now, a really great vibrato will not make up for poor intonation, obviously. However, if you've got all your fundamentals order and you've got vibrato and your competition doesn't, then you're probably going to come out on top. So I do recommend cultivating a beautiful vibrato. We're going to